So the first question I have for you is, what do these 2,000 doors have in common? They open and close. What else? I own them. The reason I put this up here, and some people have said because you like to brag, it's like, it's not the reason I'm putting this up here. The reason I'm putting this up here, quite frankly, is because I want to let you know that even though I've owned over 2,000 units over the last 15, 16 years, I have not owned any of my multifamily properties by myself. Every single one of these I put together with partners. Money partners, experienced partners, and credit partners. Until just a couple of years ago, I never even signed on one of our commercial loans for any of our properties, because we had other people who were willing to step up and use their credit to sign on the loan as the guarantor. So I put this up here because I wanted to let you know that you can do this yourself. You can raise money from other people. You've heard of OPM, right? Other people's money. You can borrow money from the bank, and you can theoretically invest with partners and have them come in with the down payment and the closing costs. You can also borrow somebody's credit. And if you're just getting started, you can borrow someone else's experiences, because some commercial lenders, if you have no experience owning an apartment complex, they're going to want somebody on your team that has that experience. Does that make sense? Let's learn a little bit about the Kansas City market. By the way, this is the metro area. So this includes not only the KC side, but the Mo side. Unemployment is at 4.1%. We're nationally it's at 6%, so you're well below the national average. Your employment increased last year by 1.9%, almost 2%. However, you're still not back to where you were pre-pandemic employment numbers. So you still have a ways to go. By the end of this year, you should just barely bypass where you were at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, with total number of jobs in the market. But last year, you actually rebounded with about 78,000 jobs in 2020, another 45,000 last year. Unfortunately, one of the websites I used was down, so I can't tell you what the projected job growth is over the next 10 years, but I can tell you the population increased about 8% in the last 10 years. That's actually a good thing. For those of you that don't like sitting in traffic, it's still a good thing. Because what happens when you have that many people moving to a particular market? You need housing, right? Occupancy goes up, vacancy goes down. What happens to your rental rates and your value of your properties? They go up, especially when you're talking about apartments. I'm going to show you that during the course of the presentation on how you can have actually better control of the value of your properties with apartments and commercial property than you do with single family homes. This is also what happened in 2021, specifically about apartments. You added 4,460 units, but 5,074 were absorbed. Now I know from history that some of you are looking at and saying, well, wait a second. If they only built 4,460 units, how did over 5,000 get absorbed? Where did that inventory come from? The year before, right? It came from the year before, and I'm going to show you a graph that shows you where all that came from. The good news is that if you absorb more units than are available or new units that are coming online, what happens to your vacancy? It goes down. What happens to your rents? They go up. What happens to the value of your property? They go up. So if you notice, your occupancy increased by 0.5 point to 95.6%, and your rents increased by almost 6%. That's fantastic. Here's what's projected for 2022. Job growth is projected to slow down a little bit, but there's also some new stuff going on around here that's just fantastic. They're redoing the Sprint. I'm trying to remember what this. It's not the Sprint Center. What do they call it? Well, it used to be called the Sprint Center, right? It's now T-Mobile. So they're going to redo that. Of course, that's going to bring in something like 24,000 new jobs with all the stuff that they're talking about doing in that particular area. But if you notice on here, this year, they're only projecting a little over 13,000 new jobs, which is about a 1.2% increase. They're looking to bring on another 4,200 apartments, but only about 3,300 of them will be absorbed. So now you've got a little bit going the other way where your vacancy is now going to go up. And you would think, of course, rental rates are going to go down, but they're not. Look at the projected rental rate increase. Even with a small increase in vacancy, they're still projected that your rents are going to go up about 4.5%.
What does absorb?
Sorry?
What does that absorb?
The absorption rate is how many units come online and how many of those are absorbed. So in other words, if they bring in 5,000 units and 4,000 of them are absorbed within the year, you have an 80% absorption rate. So they're talking about the new units that are coming online and how quickly they're leased up. And if you're in a really hot market, a lot of those are leased up within 90 days, which is fantastic. But in this particular case, under these numbers, they're looking at the year. So over the course of the year, how many are coming online, how many of them are going to be rented by new people moving into those particular units. All right, so here's the graph I was talking about. This shows you some of the numbers I just gave you. It shows you the occupancy rates, it shows you the rental rates, it also shows you the average rent, and of course the occupancy was way up here. It's going to drop from 95.6 down to 95.2. Here's another one over here. This shows you the absorption rate, so this shows you the numbers I gave you for 2021. Here's the numbers for 2022. By the way, these are my graphs. You can get these graphs. You go to a website called Berkadia.com, B-E-R-K-A-D-I-A, Berkadia.com. And they actually have one of these reports. They'll do this at the beginning of every year, and they'll show you where previous year's work. You notice this goes all the way back to 2016, and then it forecasts what they believe is going to happen. And there's all kinds of write-ups and little paragraphs that talk about all the new jobs that are coming in, or jobs that are being lost in some markets, and how your market is going to benefit or be hurt by some of the things that are going on. So before I move on, are there any other questions about the Kansas City market and what's going on with your economy? By the way, in case you haven't figured it out, your economy's doing well. Not all markets can say that. Some can go a little thumbs up, some can go a big thumbs up. Any questions? Cap rate is the return you get on your property if you buy it all cash. So with no leverage involved. Now you do have, most of you will have a mortgage, but in order to look at the value of the property, you don't have the mortgage involved in the whole thing. So what's the return you get on the property with no mortgage? So if you paid cash for it. Anybody know what the cap rate is here in this area in Kansas City?
10%.
It's a little over 5. It's like 5.1. Which means if you were to buy a $1 million property, you would get a 5.1% return on your money. So what is that, about $5,000? 50,000, thank you. $50,000, I forgot a zero. You get $50,000 return. Now some of you would look at that and say, well, that's ridiculous. Getting a 5% return? If you had $1 million sitting in the bank, what kind of return would you get? 0.1, 0.2. So 5% ain't so bad. And then when you throw leverage into the play, now the value of the property goes up even more. So how do you find out the market cap rate? You talk to experts in the market, real estate agents, lenders that loan on the type of building that you're looking to buy, and commercial appraisers that appraise the type of building you're looking to buy, because they're doing this all day long, and lenders are loaning on those properties. They can tell you what's happening with the cap rate in your particular market. I call the wealth formula, which will show you how you control the value of your property and how you take that into effect when you're buying a property to see what raising the rent will do to your property, or what lowering your expenses will do to the value of the property through forced appreciation. For every dollar you increase income or decrease expenses, you increase the value of the property by $10. Now that's if you're in a 10 cap market. I just told you what's the cap rate here. 5. Now for those of you that don't understand cap rate, when the cap rate goes down from 10 to 5, the value of the property goes through the roof. It's not the other way around. Now, yes, it is true that if you have a 10 cap property and you bought it for $1 million, you're going to make theoretically $100,000 at the end of the year after all of your expenses are paid. With a 5 cap property, yes, you might only make $50,000. But when it comes to the value of the property, you're actually going to take the cap rate and divide it into the NOI, which is that $100,000 or $50,000. And you know what's going to happen? The value of the property is going to go up, and it's going to skyrocket. And I'll show you that in just a second. So how do you increase the income or decrease the expenses? Any thoughts? Anybody?
Charge more the next month.
Charge them more the next month? Is that what you said?
Yeah, different add different revenue.
Can you just charge somebody more the next month? One of your renters?
Depends upon the lease.
It depends on what?
Lease.
It depends on the lease. So if they're locked into a lease, can you just raise the rent if they've got 10 more months to go? No. It's called lost to lease because it's locked in. But if you can raise the rent over the course of the year, hopefully you are, hopefully everybody in here is raising your rent every single year, Because if you're not, I actually did this presentation in Fort Lauderdale a couple of weeks ago, and there was one guy that had, I think it was 83 units. And I asked him how much he was raising rent. He goes, I'm only going up like 25 bucks a year. But when people move out, he's raising it $250. Well, why are you raising it more than just 25 bucks? He goes, well, because they're already in the property and I didn't think I could. It's like, yes, you can. If their lease expires, you can raise the lease to whatever you want, unless you're in an area that has rent control that says you're limited on how much you can raise the rent. So we did a little thing that we're going to do right here on his property, and at the end he said, I think I'm going to raise my rents. I mean, it doesn't have to take him up 250 bucks, but would you agree that $100 a month is better than only raising it $25 a month? Yes. Especially if that's market rate. Market rate was $250 more, and he was only going up 25, maybe 30 bucks. That was nuts. So you can raise rent. So very quickly, by show of hands, again, because I already asked you this question, how many of you guys in here own in one apartment complex? It doesn't. I'm not talking about one building, but one complex. So it could be a couple buildings all in the same area. How many units do you have? Jerry?
24.
24. 24. Anybody else?
8.
Do I hear 25, 25, 25, 8?
11.
11. All right, so is it okay if we use the 24? Jerry, can I pick on you? Okay. You have to speak up though. So Jerry has how many units, everybody?
24.
24 units. Jerry, did you raise the rent last year?
Yes.
How much? $50. So it's $50. So by the way, this is the interactive part. So those of you that have calculators, some of you call them cell phones. Help me out here. Gonna need your help. So 24 units times $50 equals what? $1,200 bucks. And that's per month. So what do we have to do to that?
14,400.
Multiply it by 12, which comes out to 14,400. You guys with me so far?
Yeah.
Excellent. Jerry, do you have a property manager? Please say yes. Please say yes.
Yes.
Please say yes. Excellent. How much do you pay the property manager? Percentage?
8%.
8%. So grab your calculators, subtract 8%, or give me 92% of 14.4. What do you get? 13,248. Now what I'm going to do is, if this is in a 10 cap market, I'm going to divide this by 10%. What do you get? Sorry, so you actually, this is the correct way to do it, is actually take the number and divide it by. I've seen people before, they tell you just multiply it by 10. The only time that works is when you're in a 10 cap market, because whether you multiply 13,248 by 10 or divide it by 10%, it comes out exactly the same. So that means that Jerry raising his rent an average of $50 per unit over the course of the year, that means that his property just went up in value $132,480. Can you do that with a single family home?
No.
If you raise the rent $50 on a single family home, does the value go up? What determines the value of that single family home? So why does the value of a commercial property go up? It goes up because the way I, and hopefully you, will start buying commercial properties, it's not based on the true value, it's based on the income that the property generates. And if Jerry raised the rent $50 a month on average, he just raised that stream by $13,248, which means somebody else in a 10 cap market is willing to pay him $132 more to get their hands on that income stream. But wait, there's more. What did I say the cap rate was here in Kansas City? 5. So now take the same 13,248 and divide it by 5%. Yes? A little more than that? 249? 2649. So 900. Okay, I rounded down a little bit. There we go. How's that? You okay with that? How else can you increase the NOI? You can decrease the expenses. Let me give you an example of one of the properties that my students were looking at a couple years ago. They went out and they took the profit and loss statement that they got from the seller. They went out and they found out that they were paying $2,000 a month for landscaping. Now, you need a little context, because some of you might look at that and say, well, that's really high. Now, if you're talking about a single family home, is that high?
Yes.
Yes. If you're talking about a 300-unit apartment building, is that high?
No.
No, that's extremely small. Well, so here's the context. The area that's being mowed in this particular apartment complex was about the size of this room.
Wow.
How many of you would like to make $2,000 for mowing lawn about the size of this room every single month? Yeah, now the property was in Cincinnati. So what are they doing 6, 7, 8 months out of the year? They're mowing the lawn. What are they doing the other 4, 5, 6 months out of the year? They're shoveling snow. But it's still high. So they took that number and they went to a couple property managers and they said, look, is this realistic? Actually, they showed them the whole P&L and a couple things popped out to property managers, and this is the one that made the biggest difference. Because what they told them was that what they should be paying is between $600 and $800 a month on average. So let's go with the higher one. Let's say we hired the company that had $800. So what are we saving, or what's our new monthly amount? $1,200, right? We just saved $800. So now we're only paying $1,200 a month times how many months? I'm sorry. We saved $1,200 a month times how many months? Times 12 means we just saved $14,400 per year. Do we have to share any of that with the property manager? Are they going to get their 8%?
Yes.
No, that's not income. This is expense. They only get paid on the rent that they collect. So we don't have to share any of that with the property manager, correct? So first and foremost, $14,400 goes where? HIP National Bank, baby. HIP National Bank. On top of that, if we took this and we said that this was a 10 cap market, how much does the value of the property go up? $144,000. Now, when the students were looking at this property, the market was 8.5 cap. So now take your calculators, take 14.4 and divide it by 8.5%. 14, that, by the way, this is what we're going to be doing on Saturday. This is helping you learn how to do it by actually putting fingers and touching. It's called kinetic learning, right? Kinesthetic learning. You got to do this. 14,400 divided by 8.5%. $169,000. Isn't it? You guys should be excited about this. Can you do this with your single-family homes?
No.
By the way, this works with your mobile home parks, storage facilities, office buildings, strip malls, apartment buildings. It's all based on the income that the property generates. How many of you would like to generate more income? You know, some people have come to me and say, Anthony, how do you find all these deals? Or how do your students find the deals? I'll tell you right now, hands down, worth the price of admission tonight. You get the best deals. You get the best deals by creating relationships with people in the market where you want to buy. You create relationships with real estate agents, property managers, lenders, appraisers. Where's another place you can create relationships with people in the market?
Right here.
Like right here. Exactly. Come to the MAREI meetings. How many of you have met somebody else here and done a deal together? So about 10 of you. Excellent. So if you keep coming here, can you find people that know about deals? I get people all the time. I do these presentations and inevitably I might have somebody come up and say, hey, I know where there's an X deal for sale. Are you interested in taking a look at it?
Yes.
By the way, thank you very much for saying the correct answer, because most people don't get that. The answer is always yes until you have a reason to say no. And you don't have a reason to say no until you go through the numbers to see whether or not the deal makes sense. Because just off the top of your head, you're not going to know if the deal makes sense or not. So always say yes.